Okay, welcome everyone. I hope everyone is excited for their final BioPsych lesson today. I know it's been tough. I know it's been very intense, and I often go quite quickly. I will be putting up a course review thing at some point on the page for you to just give some feedback to me. And it will be anonymous. So if you, want to air your grievances, there's a good place to do so. I know that there's also a class rep meeting coming up, I think on the 4th of May or something like that. So
I mean, from PTS. PTS is my top.
Anything that you want to discuss with them. All right, so I'm going to get started. Okay, let me just put my brightness up on my thing so I can see what's going on. All right. And I'm going to share this screen. Okay. And then I'm going to the chat in the corner. And we are recording. All right. So this is the last thing that we're going to be doing together as a team. I hope you've enjoyed everything so far, like I said. Today, we're going to be discussing psychological disorders and how they relate to BioPsych. We're going to only be doing mood disorders and schizophrenia because they have quite well-researched relations to like brain structure and neurotransmitter deficits and stuff like that. So those are the ones we're going to be talking about today. I know that people wanted me to talk about, for example, borderline personality disorder, dissociative disorder, those type of things. I don't want to touch the personality disorders. I don't feel qualified enough to do so. And I do think it's something that will be touched on later in your psychology career. I also don't think it's the wisest of me to kind of expose you guys to that at a first year level because it is quite complex practical stuff that is involved in those kinds of diagnoses. And even me with getting my master's and stuff like that, I'm not doing a professional master's like clinical counseling where you actually deal with that stuff. So I think it would be really premature of me to kind of act like I'm going to now lecture you in it. Okay, luckily though, depression is something I'm quite familiar with, and schizophrenia is something that has been studied quite extensively. So I do feel comfortable chatting with you guys about that kind of stuff. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today, the mood disorders, specifically looking at depression because depression is kind of like the baseline to most mood disorders. You'll see why now, and then just branching out there a little bit. And then schizophrenia, and then some explanations for schizophrenia. We have touched both on depression, schizophrenia, and then things like anxiety and ADHD, and then other neurological disorders like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's in the course. So if you feel like the stuff you learn about here today is quite interesting, go back in your in the notes and have a look at all of that stuff again. There are some additional videos I'll put up today about depression as well, so check all of that out. I'm also just going to end the lecture then with some test information and keep it quite open for people to ask questions. Okay, so yeah, content today won't be too long. Okay, so mood disorders. So the DSM definition for mood disorder is a mental disorder that is characterized by disturbances in a person's mood. Okay, it sounds obvious. A mood disorder is when there is a disorder in your mood. Okay, when we're talking about mood, it's like how you're feeling, your disposition, your affect, AFFECT, not effect, affects. And that's basically like your demeanor, how you seem, all of that stuff. Okay. So the main mood disorder that kind of comes up the most is depression. Okay. Depression in itself means that there's a low, sad state of mind in which a person may feel overwhelmed. Okay. That's depression. Okay. Then there's different types of depression or different disorders that relate to depression. So you don't have a depression disorder or depression. Okay. We stray away from that and we try to rather give like an actual disorder if that is the case. Otherwise, we'll just say, you know, we're experiencing depression. Okay. And remember, as we were just talking about yesterday, each of these disorders will have different criteria to qualify for a diagnosis and different time frames and stuff like that. I'll speak briefly about that now when I speak about major depressive disorder. Okay, so firstly, dysthymic disorder basically means a bad state of mind. So there's been a disturbance in your state of mind. And please mute your mic. Someone's mic for us. Okay, I don't know if I managed to mute them. Anyway, please remember to mute your mics. So that's dysthymic disorder. It's kind of like the general catch-all term for this kind of like thing. It lasts for about 2 years or 1 year in children. Okay, there are other criterions to note. I'm not trying to teach you all the criteria because I'm not asking you to diagnose people. Please do not. You are not qualified to until you have your HPCSA certificates and registration and you've written your boards. Do not diagnose people. You are not qualified to. Okay. Major depressive disorder is like depression as we typically know it. Okay. It's a depressed mood that significantly is significantly disabling. Sorry. Okay. Disabling, by that we mean like it is affecting your everyday life. Think of those 4 Ds we were learning about. Okay. That dysfunction and that distress. Those come out a lot in major depressive disorder. Okay. It's obviously going to be more severe than dysthymic disorder. And there are many symptoms that fall under depression, well, under the depressive disorder diagnosis. And there is a time frame that you're experiencing these symptoms for at least 2 weeks every single day. Okay. I think it actually might be up to a month. But yeah, there's very specific criteria for a disorder diagnosis in this case. So if you're just feeling low or whatever, we can't just say that you have major depressive disorder. We can't make that jump. Okay. Some symptoms or signs that I can remember off the top of my head would be either loss of appetite or an increase in appetite, an increase or decreased need for sleep, trouble concentrating, general low mood, weepiness, like you just feel like you want to cry all the time. Try to think what else. Suicidal ideation or tendencies, loss of pleasure or drive, like things that normally make you happy don't make you happy anymore. With that, sex drive can go. And then ironically, then all the treatments for depression, most antidepressants have all of those things as side effects. So very, very funny. But anyway, anything that's very much linked to like a serotonin or norepinephrine deficit, we're going to see as symptoms for depression. Okay. And then some interesting statistics. When people, like you Google a disorder or whatever, or a disease, depression is the most common healthcare topic that is researched per year on the internet. So 19% of all searches for a disorder like the cold or something like that, 19% of those is related to depression. Okay. Next up, we have sinuses or allergies at only 16%. Okay, so that can tell you about how commonly people feel depressive symptoms, not necessarily that they are depressed, but that they are experiencing depressive symptoms. So again, why it's important not to just diagnose or jump straight to the diagnosis. Bipolar disorder is then at 14%. Bipolar disorder is not that common in the world population. So again, people self-diagnosing or experiencing those symptoms and thinking that they have the disorder when they're actually just experiencing some traits of the disorder. Arthritis and rheumatism are at about 10%. Okay, so you can see a lot of people experience depressive symptoms. Does not always mean that you have depression though. Okay, if you feel like you do, or it's something you want to chat through, it is so recommended that you just go and speak to someone, get in touch with a counseling center or a psychologist and speak to them about it, and they might just, give you some more answers. Okay, Google's not going to give you the answers. Google can't sit with you and talk about your feelings. Okay. Depression then can be unipolar or bipolar. Unipolar is when you're just feeling normal and fine, and then you have a bout of depression. Whereas bipolar is when you're having depression and something called mania, which is basically the opposite of depression, if we can think of it like that. Mania is elation and frenzied energy. So it's high mood. You don't feel like you need to sleep. You have a lot of ideas going through your head. You're very, very motivated and ambitious all of a sudden. Your sex drive increases, your risk, you become more risky. Those are all marks of mania. And if that's happening over a period of 2 weeks, we call it a manic episode. When a manic episode is identified, or a hypomanic episode is identified, coupled with depression over 2 weeks, then we can maybe look at a bipolar diagnosis. Okay. Again, a lot more criteria than just feeling super happy and then feeling super sad. That is not depression or bipolar disorder. Okay. Then cyclothymic disorder is when you have emotional highs and lows. It's not as marked as bipolar disorder. I can see the highs are really high. I can see the lows are really low. Cyclothymic disorder is more, we see that cyclical, switching between moods over weeks. Like 1 week is really good, 1 week is really bad, and it's quite intense. Remember, most of you are around about the ages of 19 or 20. Our prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of emotion regulation and all of those things, isn't fully developed until you're about 25 or so. So it is very common for us, with all our hormones running around and stuff like that as teenagers and whatever, for us to experience emotional highs and lows. Okay, it's the same thing as if you're on medication, if you're on birth control, some of those things can also cause mood swings. Okay. People that have periods will attest to the fact that before you have your period, you get PMS, which actually is classified as a medical disorder. Not enough to get an LOA though, unfortunately, but it's actually marked by those highs and lows of the mood because of your hormones, swinging about and causing those things. Okay. Then seasonal affective disorder, SAD, so literally sad, which is quite funny. Ironically, I've got a very warped sense of humor, so I always find it funny that the disorder that means that you're sad is abbreviated as SAD. That's basically when you get depression at the same time every year. It's usually like in the colder month, autumn, winter. And it's quite common in northern countries where there isn't a lot of sunlight per year, like the sun doesn't see them as much as us, where we're closer to the equator. So often they'll have to have light therapy, where they'll literally just have special lights that like they put on themselves for certain hours during the day to make sure that they're getting enough vitamin D so that dopamine levels stay stable. Okay. Treatments for mood disorders. So specifically, we're talking about depression and the depression seen in bipolar disorder. There'll be psychotropic drugs. Psychotropic means it acts on the brain, such as antidepressants. So SSRIs, SNRIs, and then mania, for example, in bipolar, that might need to be treated by something else. Okay, so someone's asking, so these mood disorders do touch on or influenced by personality disorders that we are not talking about. For example, if you have a personality type A, maybe you have an addictive personality. Okay, you're actually talking about 4 different things there. Okay, so mood disorders and personality disorders are 2 separate things. Okay, you could have a mood disorder and a personality disorder, or vice versa. That's completely possible, but they're completely separate things. Remember, we were talking about comorbidities, where there can be 2 things present at the same time, and they can influence the rates at which we're seeing them, but they're completely separate things. Then personality types, those are not related to personality disorders. Remember, disorder means it's when there's something markedly wrong with what we would see typically in a personality. Personality type A, which is just like a generalized term, it's not like a actual scientific thing, just means that you're a more ambitious and assertive person, whereas type B means you're more relaxed and stuff. If you're interested in those things, look up the Myers-Briggs test, okay, the MBTI test. 16personalities.com, if you've ever heard of that. They deal with those kinds of things. An addictive personality is, again, completely separate. That just has to do with what we were talking about when we were talking about drugs, how some people are genetically, socially, environmentally predisposed to addictions. And we'll say that they have an addictive personality type. Okay. So someone asked me to explain more about mania. I'm actually going to Google it so that I can actually get the correct definition, because I don't want to spit off the top of my head about it, because a lot of people self-diagnose themselves with bipolar disorder because they experience like really happy moments and then really sad moments, and that is not bipolar disorder. I have a friend who I think misdiagnosed themselves with bipolar disorder and then acted up the symptoms in front of the psychiatrist, and now they're on extremely hectic bipolar drugs, because most of these medications are very, very hectic things, and specifically for treatment mania, it's quite an intense therapeutic process. And taking medication that you shouldn't, as we were talking about, is very, very bad for you. So yeah. Please remember to mute yourselves. Okay. So this is the DSM criteria for bipolar disorder. I'm reading off my version of the DSM. Okay. So a manic episode is a distinct period of abnormally and persistently elevated, expansive, or irritable mood, and abnormally and persistently increased goal-directed activity or energy, lasting at least 1 week, it's normally 2 weeks, and present most of the day, nearly every day. Okay, so the main things there: elevated mood, expansive mood, like you just want to get out there and do things. Irritable doesn't only just mean grumpy, it literally just means like you're hypersensitive to things. Abnormally and persistently increased goal-directed activity, so you get a little bit more like ambitious and like go-gettery. Like think of those people in like Wall Street that like they're going to do amazing things. That's basically what it looks like. During the period, these symptoms are present, at least 3 of them. Inflated self-esteem and grandiosity, so like you think you're weird and wonderful and fantastic. Decreased need for sleep. You're more talkative, or you feel a pressure to keep talking. There's a flight of ideas or subjective experience that thoughts are racing, so you just feel like your thoughts all over the place. distractibility, increase in goal-directed activity, and excessive involvement in activities that have high potential for painful consequences. So risky behavior, unprotected sex, drugs, drinking, all of those things. You can also notice, though, that all of those things kind of just sound like someone having a good time. So that's why it's very dangerous for us to just suddenly say, oh, I'm having a manic episode. Bro, you might just be having a good week. Okay, so like, be very, very wary of self-diagnosing. I cannot stress that enough. I've fallen into the trap before, and I've gotten myself into such frenzies about things because of it. Talk through this stuff with a professional if you are genuinely concerned. Otherwise, assess, are you just having a good week? Are you maybe someone prone to depression and you're just having a really great week because there's less stressful things, you have less tests on, whatever, and you're just feeling good? Okay, like, remember, it's important to have those differentiations. Okay, can GAD, which is generalized anxiety disorder, depression, and mania go hand in hand? So if depression and mania are present, then it would be a bipolar 1 or 2 diagnosis. And generalized anxiety and depression have very close correlations. I know for me, I've been diagnosed with both before, so they do have a lot of overlap, just because the things that kind of affect the one kind of affect the other two. So that's very common. But also, if you are beginning to then rattle off a bunch of disorders, you need to maybe reassess and see if maybe there's a differential diagnosis, like maybe your anxiety symptoms are actually part of your depression, or maybe the depressive symptoms you're experiencing are actually ADHD. So be wary of people that rattle off diagnoses and stuff that they've come up with, okay? Because and I don't know, unless it's coming from a therapist or psychiatrist, I'm very, very wary of those kinds of things, okay? It shouldn't be attractive or wonderful or exciting to have a diagnosis, okay? It's the same as people don't run around going, I have diabetes, this is the greatest thing, I'm so interesting, and all of that stuff. Like, it's not interesting to have depression, okay? It is debilitating. Okay, so don't seek out these diagnoses. Okay, it's not going to make you a more interesting person. Okay, so obviously there's different explanations for depression. The one we've discussed the most has been the neuroscience one, where we think that it's linked to low norepinephrine and serotonin activity in the brain. And sociocultural theorists, we're talking about all the different models yesterday, they think that depression has links to if you have lots of stresses in your environment, like abuse, poverty, things that can affect your mood and general outlook on life. And also if you have a lack of social support, if you are lonely or you're not feeling supported when you are going through something tough, it could lead you to having to experience, low mood and stuff like that. And then the cognitive behavioral theorists, they speak about this thing called learned helplessness, where your brain basically teaches itself to see the world in a negative way. We were talking about the 3 different ways it can do that yesterday, but basically your brain then starts that on a feedback loop. And because you now are in the pattern of feeling helpless, that could then lead to feelings of depression, because depression has that helplessness aspect of it where you feel like life is not going to get better. At a psychologist, if they assess you for anxiety, depression, and all of that stuff, they'll normally make you fill out a Beck's inventory. Okay, what they basically are is there's Beck's depression inventory. So it's basically a way for them to assess if depression may be present. It's a screening thing, so it isn't a be-all and end-all diagnostic tool. It's rather just a way for them to maybe say, okay, you know what, I'm seeing some traits here, let's keep an eye on this. There's then Beck's anxiety index. Is it the index? Yes. And that's obviously anxiety traits and looking if maybe anxiety is present, and then they'll do some more assessment for that. And then Beck's hopelessness scale is like, you know, do you feel like there's a way out? And then obviously if you have low hopelessness and low helplessness, that could mean depression. Okay. Then there's this cognitive triad that Beck proposed, which means that all of these things could lead to you being prone to depression or depressive tendencies. Okay. So there's negative thoughts about yourself, negative thoughts about the future, and negative thoughts about your experiences. Okay. So these are the three main different explanations for depression and how depression comes about, or how people can be prone to depression. All right. With that, we're now going to move on to schizophrenia. Okay. So schizophrenia is hallmarked by disordered thoughts, perceptions, and motor abnormalities. So motor means movement, so abnormal movement. The word schizophrenia, schizo means split, and phrenia or phrenic means to do with the mind. So it's a split mind. Okay, so your mind is not agreeing with itself, basically. It's a fragmented way of thinking. That's also a way to think of it. And it's basically that thought of your mind disagreeing with itself and being like, no, that's not real. And then your brain is like, no, but it is real. And then, you know, trying to grapple with that. 1 in 100 people will suffer from schizophrenia during their lifetime, not always to the extent that it requires medical intervention or diagnosis or something like that. But yeah, you might suffer with delusional thoughts or disordered thinking or something like that at some point in your life. Remember, if you're anxious and stuff like that, you also, and depressed, you might have some disordered thinking where you're just kind of feeling a bit scatterbrained and overwhelmed. Okay. Again, if you've experienced those things, does not necessarily mean that you have schizophrenia. Okay. They've found that there's an equal likelihood of it being in men and women. And then funnily enough, in 3% of divorced or separated people, there could be schizophrenia, 2% in single and 1% in married people. That was just an interesting statistic I found on the old slides that I was like concerned about, because I'm kind of in the middle one now and will be for a while because I'm not planning on getting married anytime soon. So that's basically schizophrenia. We're going to go into a bit more detail on the next slide. I have someone asking if I can slow down, so I will try and slow my pace. I do want to get through this so that we can talk about the test and then take questions, and then I will go back and re-explain anything. But remember, I'm just talking generally about a lot of these things. The stuff on the slides is what you need to really focus on. Okay. So the thing about schizophrenia is it has two types of symptoms that we can subcategorize the symptoms into, and they're called positive and negative symptoms. And I want us right now, and hopefully for the rest of your psychology careers, to now move away from the thought of positive is good and negative is bad. Okay, positive means adding. It literally is a plus in mathematics, so it's adding. Negative is subtracting. Remember, you were talking, I don't know if you did this in developmental psych, but we did it about positive and negative reinforcement and punishment. Positive reinforcement or positive punishment means you add something. And then negative reinforcement or negative punishment means that you take away something. And then the reinforcement is if you want to get a behavior to continue, and the punishment is if you want the behavior to stop. So please, when we're talking about positive and negative symptoms of schizophrenia now, I want you to think of the positive symptoms as extra things that the disease brings on to the person, and the negative symptoms as things that the disease takes away. So that's how we're going to think of positive and negative. Okay. So positive symptoms, we can also call them pathological excess. So it's something that's kind of now observed and it wasn't there before, I think of it as added on. Okay. Those things are delusions, hallucinations, and inappropriate affect. Okay. A delusion is a false belief that you hold. Okay. It is not true. It is not real, but it's something you believe. Okay. For example, people that think they're being spied on by the government, or that they're being threatened, or that someone is out to get them. Those are delusions, because unless you're a hitman or in a high-risk job or working with criminals, people probably aren't out to get you. Okay? Hallucinations are fake sensory perceptions. Okay? So literally you sense something that isn't there. So it can be any type of the senses. So auditory is the one that we always think of. Schizophrenia, hearing voices. Remember, it's not just that, but hearing stuff, seeing stuff, tasting stuff, smelling stuff, and feeling stuff that isn't there. Okay, the most common one is auditory and visual. Yeah, from time to time, we have weird things, you'll just smell something that's not there or whatever. The brain is a weird and wonderful thing. Okay, we don't fully understand it, and that's why we don't fully understand these diagnoses and these disorders. So again, if you are walking and then one day you randomly hear your voice, probably aren't a schizophrenic, because it happened just once. Someone said, would you say people who have imaginary friends at the age of 18 plus are delusional? I wouldn't jump to that saying something like that, because it's quite a mean thing to say to someone. Remember, we're psychologists, we're trying to be sensitive and stuff like that. I'd say maybe that person, it could be a coping mechanism. They could be going through something or have gone through something traumatic, and having that friend is a coping mechanism. It might be an auditory or a visual hallucination, or it might be a delusion that there's like a friend. But it's probably more a hallucination, because they're perceiving someone as being there that isn't. Okay? So I wouldn't say they're delusional. We need to stay away from using words like delusional, or you're being a bit of a schizo, or I'm feeling a bit depressed, or I'm so OCD about stuff. Diagnoses or disorders are not adjectives. Okay? We do not use them to describe people. Once you have the disease, you can say, I'm feeling depressive symptoms, or even if you don't have depression, you can say you're having depressive symptoms. But to say, yo, I'm so depressed, or yo, I'm so OCD about this thing, like I just have to have everything sorted out. That is, I don't like that language. Okay, it's not nice. Like, actually having OCD is like so difficult and so tiring that like it's very, very annoying to then hear people basically joking about it. Okay. Is it a problem if I have an imaginary friend? I don't know. I can't diagnose you with anything. Chat to them about it. Haha, do they recover, or do you live with schizophrenia forever? I'm actually not sure about that one. It has to do with the treatment and the level and all of that stuff. So yeah, I don't really have an answer for that. But I think schizophrenia, like if that kind of stuff can be sorted out, then maybe those symptoms will fade and not come back. Like the dopamine level sorted out, if that's the reason why you have schizophrenia. We'll talk about reasons why schizophrenia can happen just now. But yeah. So traditional healers who say they can see and hear things that we can't, can it be seen as hallucinations? Okay, so I actually spoke about this at the end of yesterday's lecture. And there's obviously a huge debate for that, because, for example, Christians will also claim to speak to God and hear from God. Will I then say that that person is delusional or hallucinating things? No, because I don't know what their experience is. Okay. If they themselves are like markedly feeling distressed about it and stuff, then maybe they could turn to Western medicine. But me, as someone in Western medicine, as a white lady who like literally has no experience with traditional healers and stuff like that, it would be really, really crap of me to jump to a conclusion and stuff. So yeah, everyone's experiences are different. And, you know, if it's not causing distress, dysfunction, deviance, or danger, you know, how bad is it? They do a lot of good for their communities. They give a lot of people answers. Just, yeah, I don't have an answer and I don't have a solution. Okay. Moving on though, negative symptoms of schizophrenia. So it's deficits taken away. So they have a flat affect. So literally they just sit there looking blank. Okay. Diminished facial expression. They're very apathetic. Apathetic means like basically like no, like you're listless. You're just sitting there staring into space. Loss of volition or social withdrawal, like you don't really want to interact with people and stuff like that. So again, you're seeing a loss of something. And then a poverty of thought, which basically means that there's a lack of spontaneous speech. So you no longer like strike up a conversation or like talk to the barista and be like, hey, can I have a coffee or whatever. It's just like blank, like almost like what we think of when we think of a zombie. Okay. I don't know if I touched on inappropriate effect before I got sidetracked, but that basically means that your emotions are not suited to a particular environment. So you act inappropriately, basically. Someone asked, so quiet people are schizos. Okay, as I just said, please don't use language like schizos. Okay, it's as bad as like the R word for mentally disabled or people that are mentally retarded. That is actually the term, so don't shoot me. But calling someone the R word is no, you don't do that. Same thing with schizos. That is not something that we call people. That is like not a nice thing to say. Quiet people are not schizos, okay, using your language. Quiet people are quiet people. They have low extroversion. Again, coming back to the personality test thing I was speaking about, they just aren't that interested in social interactions. There is a huge difference, and like you will see a difference in schizophrenic patients if you deal with them. Okay, someone asked like the Joker. There are a lot of interesting videos on YouTube, not always made by psychologists, where people kind of analyze different people in pop culture and say what personality disorder they have. I wouldn't know if he had a mental disorder or not. He definitely was struggling with some form of depression and stuff, and then was having some manic mood going on near the end. If he was hearing voices and stuff, then maybe. Dr. House from House, he had schizophrenia. So that's an interesting case study. But yeah. What if you feel like that when you're tired? When we're tired, remember, our brains aren't working that properly. We need sleep and we need rest so that our brain can basically refresh itself. You know, the same as we need to sometimes restart or shut down our laptop and then get it running up again. Our brain needs that too. So feeling that flat effects, loss of volition, poverty of thought when you're tired, it's completely valid. That's how you feel when you're tired, because your brain is overwhelmed and needs to like slow down. Okay. If someone has schizophrenia, don't they vibrate a lot, like out of the blue? No, not necessarily. We will talk about that, but that there is inappropriate like movement and stuff like that. Okay. Do people with schizophrenia react quickly and randomly to things? Can they be violent? They can be that inappropriate affect that I was talking about, where they don't act appropriately for an environment. That could be something marked by it. Often what we see in movies and series where they like show the typical mental hospital patient, they'll try and make them look like they have schizophrenia or one of the schizotypal disorders, which we'll talk about on the next slide. But yeah, like TV shows hardly ever get it right when it comes to that. And that's probably where you guys think of when you're talking about all these different things. Are people that are schizophrenic aware that they have schizophrenia? Not always, okay? Because their perception of reality is different. Okay, so to them, everything is normal. They actually are being chased by someone. They actually are hearing a voice that's actually there. But to us, we don't see that. Okay, there's 3 types of schizophrenia. So I want to talk about this now. So there's the paranoid type, which is the one we normally see. The main symptoms are delusions and possibly auditory hallucinations. The disorganized type is a combination of disordered thoughts and flat affects. And then a catatonic type, catatonic basically means like stopped and like frozen. And it's immobility or agitated purposeless movement. So that's the kind of one we'll see like in a mental hospital. Also remember though, mental hospital depictions, you'll often see a person just like staring at a corner. That also might be a side effect of their treatment. Okay. Did the movie Split portray schiz correctly? The movie Split is about multiple personality disorder, or I can't remember what it's now called, but it's when you have different personalities. Okay. What differentiates schizophrenia from anxiety and anxiety from depression? A lot of things. Like you won't have hallucinations and delusions in anxiety. And anxiety is heightened arousal and reacting to fears and stuff that are exaggerated. Like they actually are fears, but they're exaggerated and not as intense as you're perceiving. Whereas schizophrenia is inventing a new one almost. And depression, obviously, we've just spoken about. Then you get personality disorders that have very similar things, traits to schizophrenia, but they're separate things. And I'm not talking about personality disorders. So just so you know, there's paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. Don't you think mental hospitals just make the patients even more mental? No, that's a very incorrect perception that TV shows have given us. Back in the days, mental hospitals were really, really bad. And that would make people worse. And people like that scary idea. So we've kind of held on to that in TV shows and stuff. Okay. How else will they make money if they fix all the mental people? They're never going to fix all the mental people. Like mental health disorders are way more common than people think. Would a personality disorder benefit an individual who would like to go into the acting field? So a lot of people think that actors have, a lot of actors have narcissistic personality disorder, but personality disorders, like all these other disorders, are not attractive things that we should like strive to have. Like, I don't want to have anxiety to make me an interesting girl, like on Tumblr and like cute and quirky. Like these things are horrible things to have to deal with. Okay, so there isn't actually a benefit to having a personality disorder. Is it still schizophrenia if there's like 2 versions of yourself in your mind and you always argue with yourself, like in cartoons where there's an angelic side and an evil side? That just might be how you perceive your id, ego, and super ego interacting with each other. We spoke about those yesterday, so I'm not going to rehash that. But yeah, if it's not harming anyone and that's just your way of kind of ordering and sorting your thoughts, that's okay. Like we all have different coping mechanisms. Okay, Split, I think, is about DID. Yes, sorry, that's what it was. We used to call it multiple personality disorder. We now call it dissociative identity disorder. So you disassociate from your normal identity, like your normal, like me, Emma. If I have a different side of me, many or just one, that's dissociative identity disorder. Okay, some explanations for schizophrenia. We still don't have all the answers. So at the moment, we're just looking at the bio level things because that's where most of the research has been. So the biological bases. Okay, so there's a dopamine hypothesis that says that there's extra dopamine at your synapses. That could be what causes schizophrenia. Structural, they found that some schizophrenic patients have larger ventricles in their brain. Functional, they found that there's less function in the frontal lobes, and then decreased gray matter in the gray and white matter, in the hippocampus, thalamus, and frontal lobes. All of these things I don't have answers to. These are just things that people have hypothesized could be causes for schizophrenia. Okay. And there's no way of knowing if you have that or not. We can only just go on the signs and symptoms that we were talking about. What is bipolar compared to DID? So dissociative identity disorder is different identities. Bipolar disorder is depression and mania, okay? I hope that makes sense. Bipolar is a mood disorder. Dissociative identity is an identity disorder. There are different things going on. All right. Test information. Let me go through this, and if anyone else has any questions, we'll go through them. We have run out of time though, so I don't want to go any longer. So just what we need to know. Your test opens on the 28th of March. Oh, March. I need to change that to April. Opens on the 28th of April and closes on Friday the 28th. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to fix that in real time so you guys can see me and get that in your head. Sorry about that. I wrote that when I was not caffeinated. So it opens this Thursday, the 28th of April at 5 p.m. So as you're about to go to supper on Thursday, think to yourself, my test is open. It closes on Friday, the 28th of April, 29th of April. Oh my God, today's just not my day. It closes on the 29th of April, which is Friday at 5 p.m. So before you go to Pick and Pay Liquor, it closes at 7, so you do have time to go after your test. Before you do anything else on Friday, make sure that you have completed your test, okay? The test is going to be on all work covered, 30 questions, 30 marks. Once you open the test, you have 45 minutes. Someone said you had 1 hour last time to do the test. I'm going to double check that because on Mr. Zondor's old test for BioPsych previously, it said 45 minutes. If class rep can confirm that with me, I will change it to an hour. But as far as I'm aware, it's supposed to be 45 minutes. That's what we got. So, okay. You can only write a catch-up test. So say you missed the test on Thursday, Friday. You can only write a catch-up test if you get an LOA. If you do not get an LOA, you get 0. You get not for your test, okay? And I'm not going to be lenient on that. Department says LOA to write a catch-up test or 0, okay? You apply for an LOA with the department, Vuyo, okay, v.coffee@ru.ac.za. You email her. If you have a technical difficulty on the day, you email me and I can see if I can help you, because sometimes, like for example, if something glitches out, I can overwrite the system and let you do the test and let the test open again for you. Otherwise, if I can't help you, if it's something above my control or pay grade, I will tell you to apply for an LOA, okay? And I will help you with that. If I can please request, if you're having a technical difficulty, easiest way for me and the department to save our asses in this is you take a screenshot with the time and date stamp of your computer and have that as proof. So you email me, I'll be on my phone all day in case, and you can email me and say, look, I clicked in and then it suddenly told me I couldn't do it anymore or something like that. Take a screenshot with the time and date so I know that you're not doing it at like a weird time and trying to trick me, and I'll sort you out. I can also check on my side if you are lying to me. So please don't try and be clever about it. Okay, I called people out last year a bunch. Okay, load shedding is not a valid excuse for an LOA, okay, or internet issues. Okay, you can be on campus for that. And if you're not on campus for whatever reason, you signed a waiver with the university saying that you understand the risks of this. Okay, make sure you're somewhere with reliable internet. Check your load shedding if it starts up again. You can't say, sorry, I had load shedding. Okay, we were lenient for the tutorial because it was quite a sudden thing and it was your first tutorial. Since you've written a test before, sorry. Okay, not an excuse. Someone's asking, sorry, there are a few questions. Okay, asking about the hour thing. They made it an hour in case of technical issues. Okay, I'm going to FaceTime Elron tonight and ask him. It's so cute. He FaceTimes me instead of messaging me. Yeah, anyway. And I'll check with Mr. Zondo as well. I can WhatsApp him just after this. Multiple choice. It is multiple choice, like always. Is it all the BioPsych work or both terms? It's only BioPsych. You write at the end of each course. So remember, there was that first week that we started and then you went on back. That stuff is also part of the course. Okay, anything that you've seen my beautiful, wonderful face for is going to be in the test. Okay. Do we use both the slides and the textbook? Is using the slides fine? So the slides is basically like the groundwork for this kind of stuff, and then the textbook supplements. I'm going to focus on the slides, and then if I didn't put enough information, like say I just wrote seasonal affective disorder depression at the same time every year, but then in your textbook there's a slightly better definition, might jump there. Okay, but don't go and read your textbook. This is what we're focusing on. So if it's here in the slides, that's what we should be focusing on. Again, I'll check about making it an hour. Textbook or slides enough? Start with the slides and then see from there if your understanding is sufficient. Okay, even on campus the Wi-Fi doesn't work. I've seen that communication from the SRC, so we will be lenient. I do have friends who are on campus at the moment who can tell me, look, there's an outage or whatever. So yeah, obviously if it's beyond your control, we can help you out, but a lot of time people will just be like, no, my Wi-Fi was bad at home. I'm sorry, that's too bad for you. Get better Wi-Fi. Will there be no lecture on Thursday? No lecture on Thursday or Friday. This is the last time you have to see me. Will the exam be online? TBA. I'm not sure yet. Lectures next week. Are we done for the term? There's still 5 weeks of term left, so there definitely are going to be lectures still. Okay, it's just a new chapter and a new lecturer. They'll probably get in touch with you soon. Emma, I know that you said we should go over everything, but could you please be more precise on which chapters we should cover, because there are some chapters that cover similar context. As I said, focus on the slides and then move to the textbook to supplement your understanding. Okay, so just reading through the textbook isn't going to help anyone. Please, could you go back to the last slide on schizophrenia explanation when you get a chance? Okay, here it is. We start a new module next week. Yes, thank you. Term ends on the 27th of May. Thank you. No tuts on Friday. No tuts on Friday. Okay, those catch-up tuts and stuff like that, we'll still sort out. Mr. Zondo wants to have some more essay writing help for you guys, so we will be in comms about more tutorials. Okay, thank you, everyone. Yeah, have a good Freedom Day tomorrow, and just email me if you have any problems or questions. I've had some people already applying for LOAs for reasons. Yeah, I can help you out with all of that. Remember, Vuyo is the person who can grant those, not me. When is the essay task? The essay is due on the 23rd-ish of May. That information is up on Are You Connected? I'm going to miss you. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you, everyone. I've thoroughly enjoyed all of you. Stay in touch. Okay. I'm going to end the lecture there. And